Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be grading the Packers 2023 draft class. Now, there are a lot of varying opinions on this draft. Some people thought it was amazing, some people did not. I'm obviously a Packers fan, but I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible and mainly grade based off my rankings. So starting off with pick 13 in the first round, they took Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. Now, Lucas Van Ness might have a top 2 to 3 ceiling for any edge rusher in this class, and I understand that, and that's why they picked him. And I get that they kind of needed to go edge, but quite frankly, I'm not really a fan of what he can do right away. I think he was mainly a bull rush merchant in college. He's going to need to learn to play with finesse. And he does have solid athleticism, but he doesn't use it that much. I mean, it's his one move is speed to power. But, it's a great spot for him because he can kind of sit behind Preston Smith for you. He can learn the position, he can learn how to play with finesse, speed, and power, and be a more complete player. But I like the upside. It's just, I do think Green Bay could have done better. I do like Myles Murphy more, a fair amount more. So I'm going to give this a B-. And then in the second round, at pick 42, they took Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. Now, there were 3 players I wanted there. It was Darnell Washington, Brian Branch, first and second, and then Luke Musgrave third. So, in general, I was very happy with this pick because Green Bay never takes who I want. Musgrave is my tight end 3, well, tied for tight end 3 with one other player, but he's my tight end 3. He's a really good receiver, a high-end, high-upside tight end. He showed a lot of promise as a blocker as well as the athleticism and the ability as a receiver. He just kind of needs to put it all together and not get injured. But other than that, I liked the pick. I was surprised they didn't go with Darnell Washington, but Darnell Washington was, I guess, a little more raw as a receiver, so it kind of makes sense, but he just seemed like such a Green Bay type player. Musgrave, I will give an A to. Anyways, round 2, pick 50, they took Jayden Reed. They traded back twice to get him, and I did like the trade backs, but I'm not going to include that in the grade. Jayden Reed's a solid player. He's a slot guy. Probably a day 1 starter for Green Bay. I don't dislike the player, but I don't understand not picking Josh Downs there. Josh Downs is basically everything Jayden Reed is except better, but 2 inches shorter. And I know Green Bay really cares about height and weight, but again, they probably could have gotten a better slot guy. Even Parker Washington I would have preferred at 50, but I don't dislike the player. He has another element as a punt returner, so we don't need Keyshawn Nixon out on punt and kicks. And he's also a starting slot receiver day 1, so I don't hate it, but not my favorite pick. I'm going to give that a B- as well. Moving into the third round, pick 78, Tucker Kraft. I was not really expecting it. He is my tight end 7, I believe. But that's not because I disliked him. That's just because I really liked this tight end class. He still had a early 3rd round grade. So I was happy with the value here. He's probably a better blocker than Musgrave. He'll be a wide tight end right away. He's also got pretty good receiving ability, all things considered. He's really good after the catch, reliable hands. He's not like a super high-end route runner or not elite speed or anything like that, but he does a lot right, and I think he'll be getting snaps immediately in year 1. He might actually break the Packers' 3rd round curse, dare I say it. Tucker Kraft, I'm going to give an B to. Because even though he will play a role and they did need a second tight end, I think there were better players on the board. Like, they could have gone Antonio Johnson, gotten a starting safety. They probably could have taken Josh Downs just to make up for not taking him in the second. There's a lot of directions they could have gone. Tucker Kraft was not my top 3 to 5, even though I did like it. I'm going to give him a B. Then moving on to round 4, Colby Wooden out of Auburn. Quite frankly, I didn't scout him, so I can't talk too confidently on him. I did watch a little bit of him after. I don't hate the pick, but I don't love it either. He's really athletic, 3-tech type defensive tackle. I mean, really, he's depth. He's going to sit behind Devontae Wyatt and be maybe a rotational guy who comes in every once in a while. I think the point of him was just to have good depth in case Wyatt or Clark got injured. He could come in and be solid. And he's very talented. If he could develop, he could even one day be a starter. Maybe. But I don't really see us needing an interior defensive lineman for the next couple of years unless Wyatt isn't what I think he is. So I'll give that a C+. I think we could have done better with that pick. Again, Antonio Johnson was on the board. He filled a need. There were good offensive linemen available as well. And then round 5, Sean Clifford. Now, again, another guy I didn't watch, although I had seen a lot of him throwing the ball to Parker Washington. He's talented, he's got like a pretty strong arm and he's mobile. But we're drafting him to be a backup quarterback. He's not even the best quarterback available. I mean, Jaron Hall and Tanner McKee were both on the board. I don't know why we passed on them. And that's coming from someone who's not a huge fan of either. Sean Clifford is not as good. I mean, I'm not confident he's going to make the final roster. If he does develop and he's a solid backup quarterback, great. I don't mind that in the 5th round, but I'm not confident that he will be. And on top of that, they once again passed on Antonio Johnson. That was my least favorite thing. So I'm going to give that one an F. Round 5, Dontavian Wicks. There were better receivers on the board. Antonio Johnson was on the board. But I don't hate this pick. He's the 5th round. He's kind of a prototypical Packers receiver. If he can fix the drop issues, he does a lot right, and he can be solid depth, like a wide receiver 4 or 5. If the drops continue to be an issue, I mean, he's not going to make it that far. The drops were a serious issue in college. All things considered, mid to late 5th round, it's not a terrible pick. I'm going to give it a C+. Round 6, Carl Brooks. This was one of my favorite picks because I do really like Carl Brooks. He played edge and 3-tech. I think he profiles more as a 3-tech in the NFL, but he has the versatility to play both. He's D-line depth. Once we made this pick, I felt less happy about the Colby Wooden pick because I think Carl Brooks might even be better. He does a lot right. He's athletic. He's got good size. Even though he is a positional tweener, that kind of seems to be what half the players in this draft were. So I like this pick. I'm going to give it an A. In general, I think if Green Bay knew they could get him in the 6th round, I don't think they'd be taking Colby Wooden in the 4th. Moving on to the 207th pick in the 6th round, Anders Carlson. I do not know how to pronounce his first name. I heard it pronounced both ways. Now, I heard a lot of people say, whatever, it's fine, it's a kicker, it's the 6th round, who cares? But I looked into him beforehand, I knew a fair amount about him, and he was my lowest graded player on my board without a draftable grade. I wasn't confident that he would even make an NFL roster. To be fair to him, he was recovering from an injury while kicking last year, and I didn't know that, and that obviously affected him, but he had a really good 2020 in college, but it's just been downhill from there. His kicking accuracy just kept getting worse and worse. He does have a big leg, I'll give him that, but quite frankly, if his last name wasn't Carlson, I'm not sure he'd be in the NFL. Anders Carlson, I'm going to give that a D+, because he is a kicker, they need a kicker. Round 7, Carrington Valentine at 232. I did not scout him, but after looking at him, he's a good player. I like the value here. He's a guy who could eventually fight for a slot corner role, probably not in year 1, but we'll see. But in general, solid 7th round depth who could make the team and probably be solid corner depth for the next couple years, dare I say it. I'm going to give that one an A-. Then at 235, Lou Nichols. I was not a big fan of Nichols. I think he's not uber athletic, but I also wasn't a fan of taking him over Kenny McIntosh. I mean, frankly, I don't think he's our RB3, and if he is, I don't think he has the upside to move into an RB2 or RB1 role whenever we move on from Jones or Dillon. So I'm going to give that one, I'm going to give it a C. He's not a bad player, and it is the 7th round, so my standards shouldn't be too high, but there were better players on the board. I didn't mind going running back there, but maybe not the best way to address it. And then, round 7, pick 242, Anthony Johnson Jr. They finally addressed safety. They waited so long to address it, but honestly, I liked the player they took. I saw him on PFF's big board going in the 3rd round a month or so ago, and I did not agree with that. I thought he was a day 3 guy, but I definitely like the value in the 7th round. He's a solid player. He switched from corner to safety, even though I kind of thought he was better as a corner, but maybe that was just because he was settling into the role of safety. But he does a lot right. He's got solid athleticism, and for a 7th round pick, I do think he could make his way to a starting role eventually in an incredibly weak Green Bay safety room. Definitely think he makes the team. And then finally at pick 256, they took wide receiver Grant Dubose out of Charlotte. Again, I don't mind the position they took. They did not take the best player available. And I will preface this with saying I did not watch too much of him. It's very hard to find Charlotte film. I could watch highlights, but that's not really the same. Yeah, I mean, I think they drafted him to try to fill the Allen Lazard role a few years down the line. He's big, slow. He does deal with drop issues, but he can make contested catches. Good run blocker. I mean, basically Allen Lazard, except less developed. And again, I mean, this was the 4th from last pick in the draft. I can't set my expectations too high, but I did like Bryce Ford-Wheaton. I think he fit the Packers mold well. He's got great size, great athleticism, and they passed on him. But I don't hate Grant Dubose. I'm gonna give that a solid C. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.